It's Friday the 24th of May. This is the Climate Alarm Clock. This week's headlines: our wet winter made 10 times more likely by climate change, and getting ready for the elections in June, what's going on and how does climate fit in? Hello and welcome to the Climate Alarm Clock, your Irish climate news podcast. I'm Darragh, and after a few weeks away, it's great to be back and lovely to be joined by Ciara Daly and Anna Pringle, who held the fort together with Tom Spencer last week. How are you both doing?
All good,
Great.
Darragh. Good to
Nice
have you
to
back.
Have you back.
Yeah.
Slap.
Great to be back.
I'm glad you survived the Bay of Biscay.
Yeah, had a nice slow travel trip over to Spain and Portugal, so it was absolutely lovely. Even if it feels like quite a long time ago now already.
You're back into fast travel again now, are you?
Lamborghinis
Yeah,
all over the place.
I flew to the recording studio today.
Zooming around on your bike, are you?
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into our stories, a reminder, if you want to support the work that we do, you can do that on buymeacoffee.com/the climate alarm. And a lovely comment in this week from friend of the podcast and semi-regular contributor, Owen Gallivan. Keep up the good work, guys.
Thanks, Owen. We appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Owen.
So the first story that we're looking at, I guess it's a bit of repetition from a few weeks ago, talking about the wet winter that we just had in Ireland. And the reason that we're bringing this up is because an attribution study that you've talked about them a bit in the past, Anna, has found that the wet winter that we had in Ireland and the UK was made 10 times more likely by climate change, and the rainfall was 20% heavier as a result. So when we talk about these stories, you don't have those exact kind of figures or statistics, but this kind of retrospective attribution study where they can look at just how much more likely were these events by climate change. That's what it tells us. So I think good information to have, even if it's not the most positive news.
Well, yeah, we often hear, oh, it's just weather. This happens all the time anyway. And yes, Ireland has always been wet. But this study was done pretty quickly by climate scientists at Met Éireann and in the UK Met Office, and also at meteorological services in other countries, Netherlands, Sweden and Germany. So it's a pretty reputable group of people that have looked at this, and they have demonstrated, they've come to the conclusion that climate change had a big impact on our weather in the last 6 months. It was the third wettest October to March period ever recorded in Ireland, which I know people on farms know this very, very well. And it was the second wettest ever recorded in Britain. I'm guessing they mean not the UK, but so I mean, it's amazing to have that research done so quickly that can really point to this is what's making things worse.
You two seem quite upbeat about the fact that this is being said so this is being, what's the word, confirmed or backed up or just kind of publicized. Why do you feel why are you not crying? Why do you feel about it?
That's a great question, and it actually the kind of answer occurred to me when Anna was speaking, and I think it's because what Anna said about, you'll hear people saying, oh, sure, we've always had wet weather, sure, it always rains in Ireland, sure, this is no different. And these studies say, yes, actually, this is very different. So the kind of basics underlying it are that warmer air can hold more moisture. So there's more evaporation, there's more water in the atmosphere, and then that comes down as rainfall. So for me, the reason that I find it a bit assuring is that when people say, oh, sure, it's always been like this, it hasn't. And this study just is a really good way of showing that that's not the case. And I think the sort of really the thing that I'm kind of less comfortable about, and the big takeaway I think from that study for me, is that this level of rain, this wet autumn and winter that we had, that would occur once in 50 years. So it'll be a 1 in 50 year event without the climate crisis. And now it's expected that we'll have this every 5 years at our current level of warming at 1.2 degrees. And if we reach 2 degrees, we could have a severely wet winter like that every 3 years on average. So that is
Massive.
terrifying, but it's also really, really important information to have, because the reaction to this wet winter that we've had, particularly with farmers, is, oh, we need emergency measures, we need emergency support for farmers, we need more access to fodder, etc., etc., etc. If we're going to be having these events every 5 years, or even more frequently than that, every 3 years, we can't just keep having these emergency measures.
No.
So this is really important information, really setting the context for what future policy in pretty much every area of governance should be taking account of. And so scary information, but at the same time, really important information to have.
Yeah. And it's not just the frequency of rain, it's the intensity as well. So there's global warming, the study says, global warming has resulted in a 30% increase in the average intensity of rainfall on stormy days. That means more rain in a shorter period of time, which is obviously we don't have the infrastructure to cope with that. And then the other part of it is that winds are stronger than they have been as well. So from a wind energy point of view, that might be okay, but from a, coping with it and the effects of storms, that is not great. So yeah, Ciara, it's not really good news, but it's good that we understand
But
it.
you two feel emotionally validated, is what I'm getting from it.
We do.
We're not crazy.
Yeah, and also it's it's really good that information is there, because, and we're going to be talking about elections in a few minutes, because if politicians really cared, they could add this to the evidence base that they're using to make policy out of. And we'll touch on that in a couple of minutes. I suppose before that, just to say that I'm really conscious of not letting the kind of crazy extreme weather that we're seeing around the world become commonplace. And there's extreme heat in the Atlantic Ocean at the moment, which means there might be a very strong hurricane season coming up in the US. The heat wave in Mexico caught your eye, Anna.
Yeah, the poor wee monkeys dropping out of the trees, dropping down dead because of the heat. And then, of course, somebody goes, that always happens every year to the monkeys. But, the heat has been so intense in parts of Mexico that literally animals are falling dead out of the trees because of it. Because I think the highs were like 45, 46 degrees centigrade. It's humid. They have no way. Somebody said there's no air conditioning for them that they can resort to. So, that's the impact it's having, and it'll be having similar impact on people as well.
Yeah.
This week in Galway, it was absolutely on Sunday and Monday, it was glorious. It was absolutely stunning. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday, there was just out of nowhere these absolutely insane downpours of rain. And
that's that intensity we were talking about.
Yeah, but it was so funny. I was looking at it and I was like, logically, oh, that's climate change. But emotionally, I could hear myself saying to myself, stop, shut up. Don't be ridiculous, don't be dramatic. All of those kind of weird things that get away with me. Actually, we need Owen Gallivan here for this. But this story, I suppose, maybe that's what that is what you're getting at. It kind of is that you're able to reason with the logic. You're able to kind of build a bridge between the logical and the emotional. The logical understands, the emotional is so afraid. It's stop. Just it kind of is almost, you can gaslight yourself, or just kind of talk yourself down from worrying about it. But this is kind of that backup. I had the exact same reaction when I saw the story about the howler monkeys falling dead from the trees. Seeing the picture, it was devastating. But still, I could hear that little thought in the back of my head saying, don't be dramatic. This is just natural. It's not climate change. I still how long are we doing this podcast? And I still find myself being like, don't be dramatic, or don't be, I don't know what exactly it is I'm saying to myself, but there's still that sense of me trying to talk myself down from actually believing it. So I suppose this
Yeah, I mean,
attribution study is helpful in that regard.
if Gallivan was here, I'm sure he would have a psychological term for this, but it's that whole concept of you want things to be normal, and we can't believe
Yeah.
the degree and scale of change that's coming our way. And even when we're seeing it around us, even when we're seeing the wettest winter we've had in a long time, or you're seeing hailstones in Galway in May, we don't want to believe that that means that things are fundamentally changing, but they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And related, I suppose, Ciara, to that, to the crazy rain you were talking about on Tuesday. In Monday in Donegal, there were severe thunderstorms and a new 3 kilometre pathway up on Errigal, Mount Errigal, that just opened in October. Parts of it were washed away, and now the county council are advising people not to climb up the mountain. So I think that really links, I think, the two stories that we're talking about, kind of the extreme wet few months that we've had, and then also the local elections, where you can see this really positive project, to get people out in nature and get people
Yep.
out in the fresh air, and for whatever reason, it wasn't able to cope with heavy downpour, and within 10 months of being opened, parts of it have been washed away.
And
Which
the
is
reason,
crazy.
the reason that path was put there in the first place was because there's so much erosion on Errigal from people
Yeah.
walking up the mountain. So again, it's people causing the damage, and they put the path there to try to protect the rest of the mountain from erosion. But obviously, the scale of the rain and the intensity of the rain damaged it.
What I was kind of shocked about that was there was over 600 grand of an investment gone into making that path. So you wouldn't think like a path would cost that much, but like that is kind of that with the attribution study in and of itself is like, okay, hello, my local councillors, what are we actually going to do to kind of tackle this huge, insane problem that we're facing? So in terms of, I suppose the election is around the corner. Do we think that our local councillors are paying attention to this attribution study? Is it kind of being
No.
talked about around us?
Can I just, before we start talking about councillors, can I just add one other story that's relevant to the attribution and the changes that we're experiencing? This week there was in the UK, the government advised people that they should have 3 days worth of emergency supplies, tinned food and water available at all times, just in case of an emergency. And if you think about it, flooding is an emergency we've seen quite a bit of actually in the UK already. But they were kind of made fun of for advising that. But again, it's an adaptation, and it's something we're going to see more and more of. It's something that's very familiar to anybody who's lived in an earthquake zone or a hurricane zone. You have emergency supplies ready. But we're talking about Britain and Ireland, where we have a temperate climate that we've never had to think about that before. So I thought it was an interesting, an interesting piece of advice there.
Get the chickpeas in.
Let's get that toilet roll in. You're going to need it. And a tin opener, it says. But they're saying things like batteries, wind-up torches, radios, etc., first aid kits. So it's kind of interesting to see that.
All the things I'm absolutely useless at buying. Great.
Yeah.
Every Christmas, I ask you to buy me a tin opener, and you never do, Ciara. Get your act together.
No.
Yeah. So moving on then to the topic of elections. Elections will be about a week and a half or 2 weeks out by the time people are listening to this.
June 7th.
And we've got our local elections for county councillors and our European elections for MEPs coming up. And your question, Ciara, do we think that our candidates are looking at that attribution study?
The enthusiasm is giving me my answer before you have an answer.
Yeah, I really don't think so. I've some pretty strong thoughts on it, but does anyone else want to jump in with just kind of general election thoughts or information first?
Well, I mean, I suppose would it be helpful to start with what elections do we have coming up? And
I
not
think
assume.
before we get into the conversation of it, Darragh, I'd love to do, because I am not like yourself and Anna Banana, where I'm constantly paying attention to what's going on and who's who and what's what. So I want to take it back like 10 steps and just be like, what elections actually are coming up, and we've got the EU and the local elections. What are both of these? And like, what's the difference between them?
So the EU, European elections, so electing our MEPs. So in Ireland, we've 3 constituencies. There's the Dublin constituency. There's, is it called Ireland South, and then Midlands Northwest. So Midlands Northwest covers a good chunk of Leinster and all of Connacht, and then Dublin's Dublin, and then the
Excuse
South.
me, and Ulster.
Oh, sorry.
Cheeky.
And Ulster, and then the South constituency is kind of South Leinster and Munster, and I think, with our MEPs we have seen a lot of different important climate and nature laws and legislation. So the nature restoration law being a really important law that is in danger of disappearing, particularly with the fact that, we could see a bit of a lurch to the right and the far right after this round of elections.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you. I don't. What is it that the MEPs actually do for us?
So the EU is quite complicated, but what MEPs do is they represent Ireland in the European Parliament. And the European Parliament is where Europe-wide legislation gets voted on, either rejected or approved. They don't create legislation, but they vote on it and approve it for implementation. So they also, quite importantly, vote for the President of the European Commission. That is currently Ursula von der Leyen, who has not done us proud in any way about a lot of things. So the European Parliament votes for legislation, votes for the head of the Commission. So it's an important role. I mean, because Europe has such a large population, Ireland has a relatively small voice in the European Parliament, but we've had MEPs who have had quite an impact. And it's important that we do have a strong voice in Europe.
Okay. And then in contrast, what are the local elections that we have coming up?
So it's almost like if you think about Europe being, 350 million people, the local elections come right down to your local county and the 100,000 people or whatever it is that live there, and how you're being represented at a local level. So councillors, but the local elections are important too. And in Ireland, actually, we probably don't have enough local government. But the local elections are important, particularly for topics like planning, Rob was talking earlier about getting things like bus stops and services in your local constituency. Also important for climate action. Every local council in Ireland has to have a climate action plan now. So your councillors have a lot to do with voting for that, but also advocating for climate and for local issues.
I think what you said, Anna, about the climate action plans is really important. If we are going to take meaningful climate action plan, loads of it is going to have to be local. When we talk about adaptation and getting areas ready for climate impacts, when we talk about reducing emissions through housing, through transport, local councils have a big impact on that. Cycle lanes, local councils would have a lot of influence, pedestrianisation, things like that.
How is it that they influence that? Like, what level of influence do they have on it?
Well, so our national climate action plan requires every local council to play a role and have a plan for climate in their local area. And then local councils also have responsibility for roads. They have responsibility for waste to some extent. I think actually they do have responsibility for waste. So they have, a lot of different responsibilities that have an impact on climate issues.
Okay.
Things like, in Dublin, things like cycle lanes, active communities, all those kinds of things are sitting in the councils.
Okay. So it is a realistic expectation to kind of be able to see climate adaptation or climate change prevention measures from our local councillors? Okay.
Absolutely.
They're at the front. Just to quote the Climate Action Plan, the councils and the local authorities are at the front line of climate adaptation and emergency planning. So maybe not so much on mitigating and reducing overall emissions, but certainly in how we adapt and how we plan for future emergencies.
Yeah. We'll say like that path up in Errigal.
Yeah.
That's the council that put that in. Now what are they going to do about it? Looking at the attribution study, you're not just going to fix the path and be like, that's that job done for this year. Another 600 grand over the next 6 years. Fine. So I suppose they're like getting a little bit more strategic about how they fix that path, taking climate change into consideration. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing we've talked a lot about it here as well is that your community and your local connectedness are really important to how you think about climate action. We've seen some great examples of that. And I think the local authorities have a big role to play with that as well. I mean, they represent the place that you live and the place that you work and so on. So that has a big role to play in tackling climate action and climate issues as well.
So how do I go about finding out who my local councillors are, who the candidates in my area are?
Okay, well, that's not as easy as you might think because it's quite hard to figure out what local electoral area you're in. So every county council has different areas within it. I'm basing my knowledge of what area I'm in by looking at the lampposts around me and what posters are on them. Because I looked it up on the Dublin Council website and there's a map there, but it's very difficult to tell. If you're on the border of an area, it's very difficult to tell there's no roads marked on the map, so it's not that easy to tell. If you look at your own county council, like we just looked at Galway County Council, there's maps there. But every county council has a slightly different map and it depends on how well it's portrayed. I'm looking at the Donegal one now, and actually the Donegal one is easier because it's a big county and they've got big, thick red lines, so that helps. But if you're on the border of an area, it's not that easy to figure out what area you're part of.
You know what we need here now with the maps? A man.
Then we'd be completely lost and we wouldn't look at the map, Ciara.
Of course, Anna, we're not able to read the maps. We're just women.
But the maps are gas because they don't actually they're kind of mapped onto like satellite maps or something, and they don't actually put on street names, or like the one in Donegal, it's mapped onto like an Ordnance Survey map and it doesn't have names of towns and stuff in it. So you have to know where you live and
always difficult.
Yeah, it is. So once you know your local electoral area and bringing it back to kind of the climate stuff, Friends of the Earth have put together amazing resources to help to make this a climate election. One of the things that you can do is contact all the candidates in your local electoral area to ask them to sign up to a climate pledge. So that climate pledge has different asks that you would ask them to commit to if they are elected. So things like implementing climate action plans, things like no new data center infrastructure, things like commitment to renewables, that kind of thing. So when you do this, there's a template email. It will tell you the name of all the people running in your local electoral area and send an individual email to them. So that's a good way to find out who is running. And then also, hopefully, they'll get back to you to tell you if they're going to sign a pledge or not. So you'll have an idea of if they are kind of climate conscious or not. So that is a really, really good starting point, I think.
For the coverage that's been taking place around the local elections, like, is there any kind of climate-specific topics that have been being honed in on or focused or spoken about?
Well, they do. It does come up. There are certainly with regard to farming, there are a lot of
Yeah.
specific issues that are probably, for the most part, not really in favour of climate action. There, in local areas, have a lot of issues around traffic. So, for example, your one that's near to your heart, the Ring Road in Galway, for example, I'm betting will be coming up in the local elections. Or cycle paths in Dublin or whatever. So there's a lot of issues like that.
Yeah.
At a national level, as Darragh said earlier, the nature restoration law is really important. But we're also seeing, though, at a national level that the government just announced that because we are not hitting our climate targets, that we need extra climate action. So I don't know if that'll be coming up much on the doors, but that's, they just said that yesterday. They're going to ask agriculture and industry to do more to reduce carbon emissions. So I doubt that'll be very popular and is likely to be, you're likely to hear a bit about that in the next few weeks as well.
Okay. So for that Friends of the Earth resource that you mentioned, Tara, I did that. It was really simple, like literally 5 minutes job. It was brilliant to do. That's my job ticked off that list. But in terms of them turning up at the door, that's where I'm kind of struggling. Like,
Sorry,
Yeah.
how did you find out what your local electoral area was to do that as a matter of
I
interest?
just knew who it was.
Okay. So, and did anyone get back to you?
I only did it today.
Okay, so I did it last night, and I very cheekily did it for the Galway constituency that I used to be in, and the Dublin one that I've updated myself in. And a councillor, a sitting Fianna Fáil councillor in Galway, got back to me and said, "Thanks for your email. What are your opinions on wind farms?" So I replied and said, generally in favour of them, with the exception of, if they're wreck in nature, if they're for data centres. How about you? And then said, "Are you going to sign the pledge?" And they got back to me and said, "Yeah, we're going to sign the pledge." I've already signed the pledge and glad to see that we're aligned on our views on wind farms. And then kind of relating to a couple of things we touched on already, a councillor up here in Dublin got back to me and said, "Thank you for your email. In general, I've always tried to take a pro-environmental approach. I've read the Friends of the Earth pledge and will be supporting such an approach as I always have." And then, interesting to hear, "In truth, I have to say to you that many of the powers available to local government in other countries are not available to us here in Ireland. But insofar as we have powers, I have and will always be using them in a pro-environmental way." So that kind of echoes what you mentioned earlier, Anna.
Yeah, that's a good response. Well, I mean, I have not sent any emails yet, but I have been looking
Because you don't care about climate change, is it?
I don't care about climate change, but I have been reading, instead of, usually when election literature comes through my door, I throw it straight in the bin, but I have been reading it to see,
recycling.
as research for this, I've been reading it to see what I can find. And I'd have to say, for the most part, there's very little mention of climate. The ones that most consistently mention it are the right-wing parties. So, for example, I have an Aintu leaflet that came in the door, and it said, proudly says that they're the only party listening to the people, and they were the party which opposed the climate change bill and its extra costs on families and farmers. That's Aintu. I've got a very glossy Fine Gael leaflet that came in. They're delivering for our community. They talk about flood defences in Clontarf, but don't mention climate at all. And action plans for better pitch drainage, because guess what? With our wet winter, he does say the hard reality is that these conditions may become a fact of life. But that's the only reference to climate. Sinn Féin, very disappointingly, well, not disappointing because I didn't really expect better, but they have no priorities that, well, at least in the I must be in the Clontarf local electoral area because this came in my door. Anyway, they have no priorities for climate here at all. None. And then there's a very generic statement from Mary Lou MacDonald saying it's time for change. Change means building homes, tackling the cost of living, delivering better health, Irish unity, listening to communities. Nothing about climate in Mary Lou's statement. Then the best one I have so far is Breach Smith. I like her. I'm not.
So
This
this
is
is
not
European now.
This is European. So these are just a mix of what came in the door. And some of the parties have European and local in the same leaflet. But Breach Smith, I like her tagline, which is send a rebel to Europe. And she mentions stop climate change, ban fossil fuels, end traffic chaos, free public transport in Dublin. She's got more in that one line, and protect biodiversity. She's got more in that one line priority than most of the others have in their entire leaflets. She is with People Before Profit. And she also starts with support for Palestine as well and banning arms sales. So, like, yeah, I was kind of surprised. I thought there would be at least more lip service in the leaflets that I was getting in the door, but very, very little. I don't have any green ones. They haven't come. They haven't found me yet.
Nina Carberry is a champion sportswoman, author, businesswoman, winner of Dancing with the Stars and coach on Ireland's Fittest Family.
And what does she think about climate change?
Okay, I want to ask you, so when people turn up at our doors asking for my vote, what am I going to say to them? Hello, would you like to come inside for a cup of tea? Like, what do you think about what do you think about climate change? Like,
So
I really struggle with this.
So there's once again, Friends of the Earth, I think, have done brilliant work here on that. They have on their election toolkit, they have an election demands document. So that asks things that you can ask your local candidates. So you can ask them to deliver local climate action plans, provide clean energy, reject data center development, support international initiatives, ensure communities have access to green spaces. So they have put kind of talking points that you can use to make sure they're on the ball when it comes to climate.
So I want to interrupt you. When they come to the door, because I've never actually had a conversation like this with the councillor. I don't know how I always manage to miss them, but I do. Thank be the Lord. But I suppose now I need to actually kind of try and make it my business to not miss them. When they come to my door, like, how do I? That's all well and good when you say it out loud, but like, pretend I'm a councillor. Let's do a bit of role playing. What would you be saying to me? Because it's all well and good at being on a document, but how do I?
So if they come and say, this is who I am, I'm looking.
Hello, I'm here looking for your vote now. So I'm your local councillor in wherever you are. What's the name of your place? Corndulla. And I'm looking for your vote now. And I'm going to represent Corndulla in Galway County Council. So will you give me your number one? Will you remember me on the day?
So what would you normally say, Ciara?
I'd say, I honestly would probably just be like, yeah, thanks. I'd be so awkward.
Just say like you're a climate voter, or like I'll be voting for people that that are taking climate change seriously. Or say I'm a climate voter. Can you tell me what you're going to do to deliver the local climate action plan? Can you tell me what you're going to do to improve public transport? Can you tell me what you're going to do to increase access to green spaces? So yeah, say climate change is really important to you and ask them what they're going to do about that. And then if you want to get into more detail about it. The other thing that I would say the Friends of the Earth have up there, that if they start saying, oh, what can we do? We're only a small country, blah, blah, blah. They also have...
Yeah, that's what I'd be coming up against. Because I remember last year emailing one of my local councillors and he said, it's not really anything I can do about it. I was like, okay, well, that's that conversation closed. But it shouldn't be.
Friends of the Earth also have a Mythbusters document. So if they're throwing out those tropes... what can we do? There's really good answers there if you want to have a read of that before they call around. And the other thing is, as Anna mentioned, all the county councils have a local climate action plan. So if they say there's nothing we can do about it, it's like, well, you do know that this county council has a climate action plan. Does that mean that if you're elected, you're not going to do anything with that plan? And see what they say. I think I've heard in a couple of places now, though, and definitely where I am, I haven't had anyone call into the door. Yeah.
That's surprising because you're in the city. I've had one guy come, but he left a sorry I missed you thing. So do you think that people need to be like extremely informed to engage in these conversations? Like, because it's not so much the lack of ability. Obviously, I flip and struggle sometimes to get my words out, but it's not that. It's more just like the confidence thing of like, oh, should I be saying it to this person, or do they know more than me, or how, like, being outsmarted. You know, politics, they're very good at talking around things,
No,
and
but
that
it's
can be
like
really
this.
hard if you're not used to doing that. So do you think it should be a thing that people, how I suppose, what would your advice be in terms of how do you overcome that kind of confidence piece that might hold you back from actually asking those questions on the door?
I think just saying, I really care about climate change. What are you going to do about climate change?
Yeah.
And then like they might absolutely plow moss you, but at least when they like finish their canvassing, you know, if a relatively large number of people have brought up climate change, then they're like, oh, geez, I do need to brush up on this, or I do need to do a bit more, you know. So
Yeah, because they do take note of what they're hearing on the doors, especially the
Yeah.
parties do. And I think the other way to think about it, Ciara, is think about your local area and what's important to you in your local area for the local elections as people are coming around. So, for example, you know, there's somebody I heard mentioning the fact that their kids' school doesn't have a safe way to walk to it, for example.
Yeah.
Or in your case, you might be, what's the name of that bog you all love that burns down every year in Corndulla? um, what's it called
Caroline.
again? The Caroline, yeah. So, but I mean, you might be saying to
Oh,
them,
the Caroline.
you might be saying to them, like, what are you going to do to stop that burning down every year? You know, what do you, so it's,
Anna, great question.
See?
Oh my God, I need to write that down.
just think about what's important to you in your local area and ask them what are they doing about it and are they going to support it. And it could be wind farms, it could be, in some cases it's data centers and not having too many data centers, but you have to look at local elections are about your place and what's
Yeah.
important in your place.
So it doesn't have to be like, what are you going to do to stop global warming? It's like, what are you going to do
No.
to like make, I suppose when we talk about the improvements of our living
Yeah.
situations that can come from climate change or from climate action, we can
Yeah.
think of that on a local level and just kind of bring it back down to, okay, that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, like, so, you know, what are you going to do to stop the council from hacking all the hedges and destroying
Yeah.
biodiversity in hedges every year? You know, it's so, and that's the kind of thing that they can have a real influence on.
And if they don't come to my door, can I go to them?
I think that's
Absolutely.
where that Friends of the Earth pledge is really good. Really quick way to do that.
Yeah.
But like, I
And-
can go into their office, can't I?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And like, one of the great things about Ireland is that people tend to know who their local councillors are, and you can approach them and talk to them. You can, you know, approach them at a shop or in a pub or whatever, and you can talk to them. You know, so so I think that's a very powerful thing you can do.
Yeah.
And just think of it as having a chat. You're great at having chats, Ciara. Just ask questions.
I know, but
you're-
it's coming up with the questions. But that's really, I actually think that's probably where I struggled. I just was like, I don't even know what I want to ask for. But that makes it a bit easier. I'm going to ask them to get the lorries off my road that kill all my
Yeah.
animals.
Exactly. There you go.
Okay, brilliant.
Shall we move on to Europe then?
Now that's a whole different issue. What are you going to ask the European ones?
How are you? How's everything over there?
What was it like on Dancing with the Stars?
Well, I mean, one thing to think about with the European elections is when Irish MEPs go to Europe, they sit in different groupings in the European Parliament. So it's kind of important to know what grouping they're going to be sitting with. So, for example, Fine Gael is part of the European People's Party, which is the largest group and is centre right. So they have been responsible for Ursula von der Leyen, for example. They have voted against a lot of the nature restoration law stuff. So it's important to know what bloc they are part of when they go into the European Parliament. You have Fianna Fáil are part of Renew Europe, Green Party are in the Green grouping. So it's just important
Sorry,
to know
is
that.
a block is like a part, like the European Parliament's version of a party. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, of a parliamentary party. Yeah, kind of.
And they choose. It's not like they're like, you go there and you go there. They get to choose which block they join.
Yes. So Fine Gael is part of the European People's Party.
Yeah.
So they choose that.
So that's now that I feel really equipped to deal with the local councillors. What about my MEPs, my possible MEPs? Are they going to be calling to the door, and what do I need to say to them if they are?
You're probably more likely to see them at shopping centres or, somewhere where there's lots of people because, especially in your constituency, which is huge, it's very hard for them to cover the whole constituency. So you're less likely to have them at your doorstep.
Okay.
In terms of knowing which ones are good on climate, the WWF have put together an amazing document on how those parties and how those individual MEPs have voted on climate issues in the last 5 years. So you can look at each group, each grouping that Anna mentioned, each block, and the Greens come out on top. They score 92 out of 100. The EPP scored 25 out of 100 in terms of climate voting. But you can also
So just as a reminder, that's the Fine Gael. That's the party that Fine Gael is part of. They score 25 out of 100.
Yeah.
On climate.
Then you can also break it down by country, and when you do that, to be fair, they're still the worst. But the Fine Gael ones score 45 out of 100. But the most interesting thing, I think, is that the Green Party score 96 out of 100, Sinn Féin 85, Fianna Fáil 69. But in front is the Independents for Change with 98 out of 100. So Claire Daly and Mick Wallace.
And Luke Ming Flanagan, I think, is part of that as well.
I don't think he is.
Oh, actually, he's not. There's only two in that. Yeah.
No.
So, yeah.
So very, very interesting that they actually scored higher on climate and nature positive voting. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're looking at from a climate point of view at EU parties, Fine Gael are the lowest. Independents for Change are the highest, and everybody else is in between.
And also to say that Labour and People Before Profit,
they don't have MEPs
a lot of other
right
parties
now.
Don't have MEPs, so they're not there. But we'll put a link to that in the show notes, and it's a really, really good.
It's a really good scoreboard.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move on to some good news stories? And there's a few of them this week.
Here, I see you're clutching your Maria Walsh leaflet there, clutching it to your heart. It's
Well, it's actually for Nina Carberry, who is also
it's Nina Carberry. Oh yeah.
Leadership speaker and business advocate.
Don't mention the war between those two. Okay. All right. Sorry, Darragh. Good news stories.
Yeah. Did you have one for us, Anna?
I did, actually. We have a few good news stories this week. One is that Uruguay, the country, has been energy independent now for 10 straight months. They have been running on 100% renewables for 10 months in a row. So
that's unreal.
Yeah, I thought that was very positive. If Uruguay can do it, maybe we can too. So all of their electricity has been generated from hydro, wind, bioenergy and solar. Now, they do have a lot of hydroelectric, which helps a lot, but still, it's very good.
That's great news. Another one that I saw that I think is a really, really good news story is there have been a few biodiversity stories around this week for National Biodiversity Week, and the native population of lapwing birds at a site in County Wicklow has increased from just 2 breeding pairs in 2017 to 77 pairs this year. So I think that is...
Geez, those 2 breeding pairs were very productive, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Dirty yolks.
But I think
Darragh, you don't talk about birds as much anymore. We need to bring this back.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to rant and rave about them now. Part of when I was down in Spain, I went to a national park near Seville with an amazing abundance of birds, including corn buntings, which were the last bird to have gone extinct in Ireland. And so we've loads of birds in danger of going extinct.
Did you bring one home with you?
Yeah,
I
in his
didn't.
pocket.
It wouldn't come on the ferry. I wanted to fly, and I said that was bad for the environment.
Oh my God, that is not what you just said. Dead.
But you know, we have some birds that are in real danger of being the next bird to go extinct in Ireland, and I think seeing that success story, recovering from 2 pairs to 77 pairs, the lapwing are a national bird in Ireland.
What do you mean they're a national bird?
They were voted the national bird of Ireland
Oh.
in the 90s, partly because they were in danger of extinction, also partly because if you really kind of squint at them, they have all the colours of the Irish flag on them. They're a little bit translucent, so there's bits of green and orange on them.
Okay. So this is our national bird. And did you know that, Ciara?
Of course, Anna.
I didn't.
Birds.
I was wondering why Darragh was getting so
Oh my
excited
God,
about these
Anna
lapwings.
wasn't even on this podcast. So embarrassing.
But no, I think the other reason I got excited was that national park that I was in Seville. There's lynx there, which we didn't see.
Oh, cool.
But lynx were nearly extinct in Spain and Portugal. There were fewer than 100 left, and now there's thousands, tens of thousands. So that recovery, I think, also kind of linked to local elections. You know, if you've got local organizations,
It links to local elections.
if you've got local organizations that are working, you can have a big impact. So I just thought that was a great news
That's
story.
great.
Hi, what are you gonna do about the birds? That's my next question.
Can't be having them wild cats around here, sure. They'll be attacking the lambs.
Right, any other good stories?
No, I
I think that's enough good
I think
news
that's
for 1
plenty.
week.
In terms of actions that people can take, really, really recommend that Friends of the Earth toolkit, their pledge, and also they're having an online hustings for MEP candidates on the 28th of May about you know, kind of climate hustings. So really,
What's a husting?
if you can attend that, really, really good to show that you will be taking climate into consideration when you're voting. So if you can go along to that on the 28th of May.
The hosting, Ciara, is when they get all the candidates together to have a chat about, and they're asked questions.
Yeah.
So kind of
So
to your
debate,
point about,
essentially.
yeah, an MEP
Okay,
is not
cool.
going to show up at your door, but this is a chance for
Yeah.
you to hear from MEP candidates.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
I've got one. Slow Food are running a webinar on the 28th of May, and it's going to be looking at the role of the media in shaping political discourse in electoral times and ways you can engage with the electoral process. So obviously it'll be looking at food security and everything in relation to delicious, delicious food. So that's something I'll definitely be checking out.
Very good. That looks interesting. Feed the change.
And also, just to flag a bit in advance, there's an amazing conference called Rethinking Growth towards a Wellbeing Economy for Ireland, running in Trinity College on the 25th and 26th of June. So that looks very, very interesting. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well.
It does. I have my ticket. Do you, Darragh?
Not yet, but I will do it before the week is out.
Very good.
Great stuff. And that is it for this week then. Ciara and Anna, thanks for the chats. Lovely to be back. A reminder, if you want to support the work that we do, you can do that on buymeacoffee.com/the climate alarm. And that is it for this week.
Thanks, Darragh.
Bye.